From Vermont Public, this is The Frequency. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. It's Tuesday, June 3rd, and here are today's headlines. A bill that would overhaul Vermont's response to homelessness is headed to Governor Phil Scott's desk, but the Republican governor's administration has remained silent on whether or not he will sign it, and lawmakers are unlikely to have the votes to override a potential veto. The bill would shift Vermont's homelessness response system from one centered on state government to one administered by private nonprofit organizations. Department for Children and Families Commissioner Chris Winters said officials were still assessing the bill's final version.
We've started our deep dive to make sure that we understand the full impacts of this bill and whether it's possible to make transformational change this year.
The bill would dissolve the statewide motel voucher program next year. A 2025 report by the United Health Foundation ranks Vermont first in the nation when it comes to senior health and well-being. The annual report compares things like poverty, obesity, alcohol abuse, and vaccination rates. Vermont gets high marks when it comes to how involved older adults are in their community and how physically active they are. Nationally, the United Health Foundation's report shows a decline in higher rates of volunteerism among seniors and better high-speed internet accessibility, but the report also found the high cost of housing and risk of suicide are worsening. You may have noticed it's been an especially wet spring in Vermont. By one local weather forecaster's count, it has rained every Saturday since March 15th. The National Weather Service in Burlington has not been keeping track of rainy weekends specifically, but meteorologist Marvin Boyd says Vermont has seen 33% more rain this spring than in a normal year. Despite saturated soils across much of the state after another rainy weekend, Boyd says Vermonters shouldn't worry about flooding this week.
Today, tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to be drying out, and that is 72 hours is a decent amount of time for soils to percolate and get most of that water through.
Boyd says it's too soon to know if the state will see flooding this summer. Vermont is seeing more extreme rainfall because of human-caused climate change. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is offering nearly $2 million in grant funding to expand access to organic dairy products in 11 northeastern states, including Vermont. The program aims to support organic dairy farmers by offsetting the cost of their products to eligible applicants, like K-12 schools, colleges, and summer feeding programs, among others. The grants will not require a match and will range from $50,000 to $500,000. The Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center will manage the program. The first-round application window runs from June 10th through July 31st. And New Hampshire's Attorney General has issued a consumer alert regarding real estate fraud. Reports of quitclaim deed fraud are on the rise in the Granite State. That's when scammers forge real estate documents to transfer ownership of a property without the owner's knowledge. The New Hampshire AG says common targets are owners of vacant lots or property owners who live out of state. Officials at the New Hampshire Department of Justice recommend setting up an online alert for your property address and monitoring real estate sites like Zillow to see if your property is listed for sale. Coming up, Vermont legislators need to put in some extra time to complete an education reform bill, which they failed to do before the scheduled end of this legislative session. We'll discuss what the sticking points are and how close they may be to getting a bill done after this.
Thanks for listening to The Frequency, where support comes from VITA, supporting business growth and innovation in the Green Mountain State. From agriculture to manufacturing, energy to food production, find solutions that turn your business dreams into reality. Visit VEDA.org and see how VITA can help make it happen.
Vermont's legislative session is over, or, well, it was supposed to be. One massive and potentially historic bill will keep lawmakers in Montpelier longer than expected. That bill? Education reform. Yesterday, the Vermont Edition team convened a trio of local education reporters. They discussed an education package that remains unfinalized and the legislative debate that surrounds it. We're going to play an excerpt of their conversation for you now, and you can find the full hour-long discussion on Vermont Edition's podcast feed. You'll hear Ethan Weinstein from VT Digger first, followed by Vermont Public's Lola Dufour and Allison Novak of 7 Days.
There's such diversity in the way that education currently functions in Vermont. And so if you're a Democrat from Manchester, as, say, Senator Seth Bongartz is, your local public education system is based around this private academy in Burr and Burton. Or if you're a House member from Bennington, your local school district spends so much less than the average public school district in Vermont. And so you come from a certain place. If you're from Addison County, your local school district might spend much more than the average public school district. And so it's not even necessarily Republican, Democrat, private, public, but it's that when we're moving towards such generational change, there's going to be winners and losers that aren't necessarily cut across party lines. But when you're beholden to your constituents, a lot of people are going to be mad. And finding that 51% to get something over the finish line becomes, a bit of a puzzle.
Independent schools, I feel like, are the Achilles heel of any reform effort in Vermont because people in tuition and communities tend to really like it and be really devoted to that system and very protective of it. And then meanwhile, the public school system has long kind of resented the fact that we have vouchers in Vermont and have long sought to kind of, enact regulations that would make private schools have to follow more of the rules that public schools have to, right? And the knock against independent schools from the public school sector is really that they sometimes get to pick and choose students, and that leaves the public system to deal with those kids who are the hardest to educate. But this is a 50-year-old debate, and it's really, really emotional. And Allison earlier mentioned this proposal that got floated at one point on Friday to let independent schools still be allowed to set their own tuition, even while public school districts would be beholden to the foundation formula. To me, that moment felt like when negotiations fell apart. That's when everyone started looking around the room and being like, okay, we're gonna be done here for a little while because things just got really dysfunctional, and it's this really, really tough nut to crack, and there's just not a lot of trust between these two parties.
And I think what's really important to note is that only about 3,500 students are publicly tuitioned to independent schools compared to, almost 80,000 that are public school students. So the fact that the independent school kind of lobby has such a strong influence when it's a very small percentage of children in Vermont or kids in Vermont that are actually going to those schools, I just find really interesting.
What comes next in these next 2 weeks? What do we know?
Well, I think that's what we're all going to be trying to figure out today and tomorrow. We know that the legislature is coming back on June 16th and 17th for a veto session, and hopefully they'll also be able to get something done with this education bill. I mean, it's pretty incredible. This has been kind of the top priority of the legislative session, and we're in this position right now where no one really knows what is going to come of it. And I will also say there's some other things held up, like there's a miscellaneous education bill that has the phone-free schools legislation that still hasn't been passed, and I think the holdup there is they were waiting to see if what happened with the transformation bill before they passed the miscellaneous ed bill. So there's still, some other stuff up in the air. I know those phone-free advocates are really concerned that that bill is not going to get dealt with this legislative session as well. So it's anyone's guess right now.
All right, we'll talk in a couple weeks. Allison Novak with 7 Days and Ethan Weinstein with VT Digger. Ethan, thanks. And from Montpelier, Lola Dufort with Vermont Public.
Thanks, Michaela.
That was Michaela Lafrac alongside 3 local education reporters who discussed the education reform bill on Vermont Edition on Monday. Thanks for listening to The Frequency today. We had additional reporting from Carly Berlin, Nina Keck, Abigail Giles, Jen Jarecki, and Mary Engish. Today's episode was edited by Liam Elder Connors, and our music is by Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. Talk to you tomorrow.
Planet Money helps you understand the economy. We find the people at the center of the story.
Garbage in New York, that was like a controlled substance.
We show you how money influences everything.
Tell me what you like by telling me how you spend your money.
And we dig until we get answers.
I had a bad feeling you were going to bring that up.
Planet Money finds out. All you have to do is listen. The Planet Money Podcast from NPR.